New York is a bi-weekly magazine concerned with life, culture, politics, and style generally, and with a particular emphasis on New York City. Founded by Milton Glaser and Clay Felker in 1968 as a competitor to The New Yorker, it was brasher and less polite, and established itself as a cradle of new journalism. Over time, it became more national in scope, publishing many noteworthy articles on American culture by writers such as Tom Wolfe, Jimmy Breslin, Nora Ephron, Frank Rich, and John Heilemann. In its current incarnation under editor-in-chief Adam Moss, the nation's best and most imitated city magazine is often not about the city, at least not in the overcrowded, traffic-clogged, five-boroughs sense, wrote then Washington Post media critic Howard Kurtz. As the magazine has increasingly published political and cultural stories of national significance since its redesign and relaunch in 2004, the magazine has won more National Magazine Awards than any other publication, which includes the 2013 award for Magazine of the Year. It was one of the first city magazines and one of the first dual-audience, lifestyle magazines, and its format and style have been emulated by some other American regional city publications. In 2009, its paid and verified circulation was 408,622, with 95.8% of that coming from subscriptions. Its websites, NYMIG.com, Vulture.com, The Cut, and Grub Street, receive visits from more than 14 million users per month. History. 1960s New York began life in 1963 as the Sunday magazine supplement of the New York Herald-Tribune newspaper. Edited by Clay Felker, the magazine showcased the work of several talented Tribune contributors, including Tom Wolfe, Barbara Goldsmith, and Jimmy Breslin. Soon after the Tribune went out of business in 1966-67, Felker and his partner, Milton Glaser, purchased the rights with money loaned to them by C. Gerald Goldsmith, and reincarnated the magazine as a standalone glossy. Joining them was managing editor Jack Nessel, Felker's number 2 at the Herald-Tribune. New York's first issue was dated April 8, 1968. Among the bylines were many familiar names from the magazine's earlier incarnation, including Breslin, Wolfe, and George Goodman, a financial writer who wrote as Adam Smith. Within a year, Felker had assembled a team of contributors who would come to define the magazine's voice. Breslin became a regular, as did Gloria Steinem, who wrote the City Politics column, and Gail Sheehy. Harold Clurman was hired as the theater critic. Judith Crist wrote movie reviews. Alan Rich covered the classical music scene. Barbara Goldsmith was a founding editor of New York Magazine and the author of the widely imitated series, The Creative Environment, in which she interviewed such subjects as Marcel Breuer, M.P., George Balanchina, and Pablo Picasso about their creative process. Gail Green, writing under the rubric The Insatiable Critic, reviewed restaurants, cultivating a Baroque writing style that leaned heavily on sexual metaphor. Woody Allen contributed a few stories for the magazine in its early years. The magazine's regional focus and innovative illustrations inspired numerous imitators across the country. 1970s Wolfe, a regular contributor to the magazine, wrote a story in 1970 that for many defined the magazine. Radical Chic. That Party at Lenny's. The article described a benefit party for the Black Panthers, held in Leonard Bernstein's apartment, in a collision of high culture and low that paralleled New York Magazine's ethos. In 1972, New York also launched Ms. Magazine, which began as a special issue. New West, a sister magazine on New York's model that covered California life, was also published for a few years in the 1970s. Well into the 1970s, Felker continued to broaden the magazine's palette, covering Richard Nixon and the Watergate scandal closely. In 1976, Journalist Nick Cohn contributed a story called "Tribal Rights of the New Saturday Night" about a young man in a working-class Brooklyn neighborhood, who, once a Wick, went to a local disco called Odyssey 2001. The story was a sensation and served as the basis for the film Saturday Night Fever. 20 years later, Cohn admitted that he'd done no more than drive by Odyssey's door, and that he'd made the rest up. It was a recurring problem of what Wolf, in 1972, had labelled the new journalism. In 1976, the Australian media baron Rupert Murdoch bought the magazine in a hostile takeover, forcing Felker and Glazer out. A succession of editors followed, including Joe Armstrong and John Berendt. 1980s. In 1980, Murdoch hired Edward Cosner, who had worked at Newsweek. Murdoch also bought Q, a listings magazine that had covered the city since 1932, and folded it into New York, simultaneously creating a useful going-out guide and eliminating a competitor. Cosner's magazine tended toward a mix of news magazine-style stories, trend pieces, and pure service features, long articles on shopping and other consumer subjects, as well as close coverage of the glitzy 1980s New York City scene, epitomized by financiers Donald Trump and Saul Steinberg. The magazine was profitable for most of the 1980s. The term, the Brat Pack, was coined for a 1985 story in the magazine. 1990s. Murdoch got out of the magazine business in 1991, selling his holdings to K3 Communications, a partnership controlled by financier Henry Kravis. In January 1992, New York ran the first big magazine story on presidential candidate Bill Clinton, 10 months before his election in November. In 1993, budget pressure from K3 frustrated Cosner, and he left for Esquire magazine. After several months' search, during which the magazine was run by managing editor Peter Herbst, K3 hired Kurt Anderson, the co-creator of Spy, a humor monthly of the late 1980s and early 1990s. Anderson quickly replaced several staff members, bringing in many emerging and established writers and editors, and generally making the magazine faster-paced, younger in outlook, and more knowing in tone. In August 1996, Bill Riley fired Anderson from his editorship, citing the publication's financial results. According to Anderson, he was fired for refusing to kill a story about a rivalry between investment bankers Felix Rohatyn and Stephen Ratner that had upset Henry Kravis, a member of the firm's ownership group. His replacement was Caroline Miller, who came from 17, another K3 title. 2000s. In 2002 and 2003, Michael Wolff, the media critic hired by Miller in 1998, won 2 National Magazine Awards for his column. At the end of 2003, New York was sold again, to financier Bruce Wasserstein, for $55 million. Wasserstein replaced Miller with Adam Moss, known for editing the short-lived New York Weekly of the late 1980s, 7 Days, and the New York Times Magazine. In late 2004, the magazine was relaunched, most notably with 2 new sections: The Strategist, devoted mostly to utility, and The Culture pages, covering the city's art scene. Moss also rehired Kurt Anderson as a columnist. In early 2006, the company began an aggressive digital expansion with the relaunch of the magazine's website, previously nymetro.com, as nymig.com. Since 2004, the magazine has won 24 National Magazine Awards, more than any other magazine over this time period, including Magazine of the Year in 2013, General Excellence in Print 4 times, and General Excellence Online 3 times. During this same period it has been a finalist an additional 48 times in categories that included profile writing, reviews and criticism, commentary, Public service, magazine section, leisure interests, personal service, single topic issue, photography, photojournalism, photo portfolio, and design. In 2007, when the magazine for the first time dominated the awards, much of the coverage the next day noted that the New Yorker took home no awards that night, despite receiving 9 nominations, and also noted that New York was the first magazine to win for both its print and internet editions in the same year. The February 25, 2008 issue featured a series of nude photographs of Lindsay Lohan, shot by Bert Stern. The series replicated several poses from Stern's widely reproduced final photos of Marilyn Monroe, shot shortly before the actress's fatal drug overdose. That week, the magazine's website received over 60 million hits and with traffic 2,000% higher than usual. The magazine is especially known for its food writing, and also for its political coverage, especially John Heilman's reporting on the 2008 presidential election, which led to his best-selling book Game Change, and for coverage of the first 2 years of the Obama administration. The New Republic praised its hugely impressive political coverage during this period. The magazine's current stable of writers includes national political columnist and correspondent John Heilman, Steve Fishman, Jesse Green, Vanessa Grigoriadis, Joe Hagan, Mark Jacobson, Jennifer Senior, Gabriel Sherman, Christopher Smith, and Jonathan Van Meter. Its culture critics include David Edelstein, Matt Zoller Seitz, Jerry Saltz, Justin Davidson, and Catherine Schultz, who won the National Book Critics Circle's Nona Balakian Citation for Excellence in Reviewing in 2012. New York has been widely recognized for its design during this period, with back-to-back design wins at the National Magazine Awards and Magazine of the Year wins from the Society of Publication Designers in 2006 and 2007. The 2008 Elliot Spitzer Brain cover was named Cover of the Year by the American Society of Magazine Editors and Advertising Age, and 2009's Bernie Madoff Monster was named Best News and Business Cover by ASME. New York won back-to-back ASME Cover of the Year awards in 2012 and 2013. For Is She Just Too Old for This? And The City and the Storm, respectively. Design director Chris Dixon and photography director Jody Kwan were named Design Team of the Year by Adweek in 2008. In 2009, after Bruce Wasserstein's death, the magazine's ownership passed to his family. Many obituaries noted Wasserstein's revival of the magazine, while previous owners had required constant features in the magazine about the best place to get a croissant or a beret, wrote David Carr of the New York Times. It was clear that Wasserstein wanted a publication that was the best place to learn about the complicated apparatus that is modern New York. In enabling as much, Mr. Wasserstein recaptured the original intent of the magazine's founder, Clay Felker, 2010s. On March 1, 2011. It was announced that Frank Rich would leave the New York Times to become an essayist and editor-at-large for New York. Rich began his relationship with the magazine starting in June 2011. New York's Encyclopedia of 9/11, published on the 10th anniversary of the attacks, was widely praised, with Gizmodo calling it heartbreaking, locked in the past, and entirely current. The issue won a National Magazine Award for Single Topic Issue. New York's offices in Lower Manhattan were without electricity in the week following Hurricane Sandy, so the editorial staff published an issue from the Midtown office of Wasserstein and Company, the firm that owns New York media. The issue's cover, shot by photographer Ewan Barn from a helicopter and showing Manhattan half in darkness, almost immediately became an iconic image of the storm, and was named the magazine Cover of the Year by Time. The photograph on the cover was published as a poser by the Museum of Modern Art, with proceeds benefiting Hurricane Sandy relief efforts. In 2013, New York Magazine took the top honor at the National Magazine Awards, again receiving Magazine of the Year for its print and digital coverage. In December 2013, the magazine announced plans to move to a bi-weekly format in March 2014, reducing from 42 annual issues to 29. Puzzles and competitions. New York Magazine was once known for its competitions and unique crossword puzzles. For the first year of the magazine's existence, the composer and lyricist Stephen Sondheim contributed an extremely complex cryptic crossword to every third issue. In the style of British crosswords, the cryptic crosswords feature clues that include a straight definition and a wordplay definition. Richard Maltby, Jr. took over thereafter. Since 1980, the magazine has also run an American-style crossword. For the first 30 years the puzzle was always by Maura B. Jacobson, but beginning in the summer of 2010, Kathy Alice Millhouse's byline began appearing in alternate weeks, and the magazine announced her as permanent co-constructor in September 2010. The cryptic crosswords were eventually dropped in the remaining 2 weeks out of every 3. Sondheim's friend Mary Ann Madden edited an extremely popular witty literary competition calling for readers to send in humorous poetry or other bits of wordplay on a theme that changed with each installment. Altogether, Madden ran 973 installments of the competition, retiring in 2000. Hundreds, sometimes thousands, of entries were received each week, and winners included David Mamet, Herb Sargent, and Dan Greenberg. David Halberstam once claimed that he had submitted entries 137 times without winning. Sondheim, Woody Allen, and Nora Ephron were fans. The competition's demise, when Madden retired, was greatly lamented among its fans. In August 2000, the magazine published a letter from an Irish contestant, John O'Byrne, who wrote, "How I'll miss the fractured definitions, awful puns, conversation stoppers, one-letter misprints, ludicrous proverbs, openings of bad novels, near misses, al. Many entrants have since migrated to the Washington Post's similar style invitational feature." 3 volumes of competition winners were published, titled "Thank You for the Giant Sea Tortoise, Son of Giant Sea Tortoise, and Maybe He's Dead," and other hilarious results of New York Magazine competitions, digital expansion and blogs. In 2006, New York's website, NYMIG.com, underwent a year-long relaunch, transforming the site from a magazine companion to an up-to-the-minute news and service destination. In 2008, parent company New York Media purchased the online restaurant and menu resource Menu Pages, which serves 8 markets across the U.S., as a complement to its own online restaurant listings and to gain a foothold in 7 additional cities. In 2011, Menu Pages was sold to Seamless. As of July 2010, digital revenue accounted for fully 1/3 of company advertising revenue. New York Magazine has a variety of online destinations including The Cut, Daily Intelligencer, Grub Street, and Vulture. The Cut, New York's digital fashion destination, was expanded and relaunched in 2012. Grub Street, covering food and restaurants, was expanded in 2009 to 5 additional cities served by former NYMIG.com sister site MenuPages.com. In 2013 it was announced that Grub Street would close its city blogs outside New York, and bring a more national focus to GrubStreet.com. David Carr noted in an August 2010 column, "In a way, New York Magazine is fast becoming a digital enterprise with a magazine attached." Books. In the 2000s, New York published 4 books. New York Lookbook, a gallery of street fashion, New York stories, landmark writing from 4 decades of New York Magazine, My First New York, Early Adventures in the Big City, and In Season. More than 150 fresh and simple recipes from New York Magazine inspired by farmers market ingredients. television. Michael Hirschhorn's Ish Entertainment developed a TV pilot for Bravo inspired by the magazine's popular weekly approval matrix feature, which has appeared in the magazine since November 2004. New York's art critic Jerry Saltz is a judge on Bravo's fine art reality competition series Work of Art: The Next Great Artist. Additionally, Grub Street senior editor Alan Seitzmer appeared as a guest on Judge on 3 episodes of the third season of Top Chef: Masters.